Today we're going to take up my 2019 book, The State During the British Raj, Imperial Governance in South Asia, 1700 to 1947. British rule had a profound impact on the way that states are organized in South Asia. It led to the creation of modern states in this region, and it provided many of those states with a liberal and a democratic bias. In India, this led to the establishment of a stable constitutional democracy after 1947. And in Pakistan, it has contributed to the creation of an unstable oligarchy in which civilian-led and military-led dispensations have altered in power. In order to understand the emergence and consolidation of British rule in South Asia, we must face some very uncomfortable questions. And prime amongst these is that why did the British succeed in conquering South Asia in the first place? This question is uncomfortable because it forces us to confront certain vulnerabilities in the Mughal Empire and its successor states. What were these vulnerabilities? The first was that these states were typically isolated from a society, and that society was also internally fragmented. As a consequence, if the state elite failed, there was no way to compensate for that on part of society. The other issue was that there were few social groups with a broader loyalty to the state, and this included members of the state elite themselves, who were typically loyal to individual rulers and divided into factions. The third was a lack of printing technology, and this lack of printing technology is one that retarded the development of South Asia's intellectual culture and scientific development. What makes this lack of printing technology even more curious is that the Mughals were well aware of printing and had been gifted printed books by European travelers and by Europeans as gifts to the Mughal nobility and the royal court. So it wasn't as if the Mughals were unaware of this technology. It is simply that they decided not to adopt it, even though their government was one that could have benefited from printing technology to a very great extent. This is because the Mughal state was a highly bureaucratic state with a lot of paperwork involved. But that paperwork did not lead the Mughals to innovate and adopt this critical technology. The next important thing is that there was a lack of ocean navigation technology. Even during the high point of Mughal rule, the Mughals had more or less conceded European primacy in the seas around India. This primacy had begun not with the British but with the Portuguese, and the British filled in after the Portuguese declined and replaced them as the dominant maritime power in this region. So the Mughals again had the technical capacity to build ships that would have more than matched the firepower and navigation strength of the Europeans, but they remained focused on inland threats. They had a very serious rivalry with the Persians for control over Kandahar. They were, of course, worried about invasions from the northwest, having themselves taken that route into India. And the vastness of the Mughal Empire, its immense resources, cultivated a kind of narcissism amongst the Mughal elites, in which it made them very blind to the fact that control of the seas was not just something that added to the power of a state, but was something that was quite fundamental to the emerging power of European states. So, in this respect, the Mughals failed to adapt these two very critical technologies. Then, of course, there was a genuine inland threat, and this inland threat mobilized very rapidly after the Mughal Empire goes into decline following the death of Emperor Aurangzeb. Numerous invasions take place from the northwest, and the most devastating of these, perhaps, in terms of the fortunes of the Mughal state, is the invasion by Nadir Shah of Persia in 1739. This invasion leads to the destruction of much of the Mughal Empire's remaining military strength. It also leads to the sack of Delhi, and it leads to an enormous amount of plunder being extracted from the northern part of the country. This plunder is so great that Nadir Shah actually announces a tax holiday for 3 years in the Persian Empire, and its estimated value at that time is in the range of 700 million rupees, which would be an almost incalculable sum in today's money. Then the Mughal Empire presided over a long period of a trade surplus economy. What this meant was that during Mughal rule, gold and silver bullion generally poured into the subcontinent, and merchandise exports from the subcontinent gave the region a positive balance of trade. So South Asia was clearly accumulating capital during the Mughal Empire. In spite of this, we do not see any great evidence of either an agrarian transformation taking place, a shift towards commercial agriculture on a larger scale. We don't see any major innovations or breakthroughs taking place in the industrial sector or the manufacturing or services sectors. There is, of course, a unified currency over a vast amount of territory, but this does not appear to stimulate the creation of modern or proto-modern financial institutions. So the Mughal Empire perhaps is too extractive in terms of how it collects the tax revenue and too oriented towards spending those tax revenues on the lifestyle of the ruling elite for sufficient productive investments to be made. So in this respect, the Mughal Empire, in spite of very favorable circumstances, does not appear to have taken advantage of those circumstances, nor does it appear that social groups in South Asia were able to seize the opportunities afforded by a unified government with a unified currency, a relatively stable internal administration, and a positive balance of trade. So South Asia remains in a pre-industrial economy in spite of all of these advantages. Then, of course, there are severe deficiencies in terms of the ideological constructs that the Mughals and their successor states used to understand the world around them. They operated in a realm of dynasties, in a realm of lineages, in a realm where authority was necessarily personal in nature. So they were not really prepared for encountering nation states like the British, where an element of ideological modernization had occurred and loyalty to something other than an individual leader or ruler had become a key factor in how these societies were organized.